The moment the world's eyes locked onto Buckingham Palace on that fateful day, no one could have imagined what was about to unfold. Crowds had gathered in the early hours, chanting, waving signs, and seemingly harmless at first glance. But beneath the surface, tension was mounting. Protesters had arrived with fury and purpose, fueled by grievances that had been simmering for weeks. And right at the center of it all, caught between history and chaos, was Prince William. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowd that is suddenly spiraling out of control, screams piercing the air, objects being thrown without warning. And there, in that very moment, you see the heir to the British throne, calm, resolute and unflinching, step forward to shield his own father. Can you picture the courage it takes to face danger for someone else, knowing full well that you might be the one to get hurt? That was William's choice. That was his reality. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Meanwhile, across the city, Kate Middleton sat in a quiet studio, ready to go live for a scheduled broadcast, unaware of the turmoil brewing just miles away. The call came, brief but enough to freeze her blood. Her husband, her partner, her rock, was caught in the chaos outside Buckingham Palace, and he had not just stood in the crowd. He had stepped into the path of danger. What would your reaction be if someone you loved was risking life and limb simply to protect another? Kate's reaction would be broadcast live to millions around the globe, and it would shatter hearts everywhere. It started with a simple alert, an urgent message from palace security. Prince William had been at the outer gates during what was meant to be a routine security check, when suddenly, a surge of protesters broke through the perimeter. It was swift. It was violent. And in the split second that followed, William instinctively moved forward, placing himself between the chaos and King Charles. A small object, a brick, perhaps, or a bottle, hurtled through the air, aimed unpredictably, and William bore the brunt. The details of the injury were initially vague, but whispers from palace insiders hinted at bruising, lacerations, and a blow that could have been far worse if not for his protective stance. As the news broke, social media erupted. Photos of Kate, moments after the call, circulated instantly. Her face pale, eyes wide, and tears streaming as she struggled to maintain composure in front of live cameras. Viewers around the world gasped. Never before had the public witnessed the Duchess of Cambridge so vulnerable, so human, so undeniably affected by fear and love. Commentators struggled to find the words, and hashtags began trending within minutes. Was this a glimpse into the hidden pressures of royal life, or a warning of the danger the monarchy faces in an increasingly unpredictable world? But what exactly led to this protest? To understand the context, one must look beyond the headlines. The demonstration was sparked by a mix of political frustration, economic unrest, and widespread dissatisfaction with recent royal initiatives that some felt were tone-deaf. The protesters were organized, determined, and vocal, but no one expected violence to erupt on the very doorstep of Buckingham Palace. Security had been tight, protocols in place, yet the unpredictability of human behavior rendered even the best-laid plans vulnerable. And there, amidst the chaos, William became a focal point, a living, breathing symbol of bravery and risk. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine the palace itself. Centuries-old walls, gilded gates, and a reputation for order and control. And yet, in a matter of minutes, all that order was challenged. The very symbol of tradition was under threat, not by foreign adversaries, not by unseen dangers, but by ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances. And at the center of it, risking his safety for the one he was sworn to protect, was William. It was a scene that might have been imagined in a movie, yet this was real, raw, and unfolding live in the streets of London. The emotional weight of this incident cannot be overstated. Kate's live breakdown was not just about fear for her husband. It was about the fragility of life, the unpredictability of duty, and the human side of those who are often elevated to mythical status. Royal families are expected to remain composed, to uphold appearances even in the face of danger. But in that moment, Kate reminded the world that behind every crown, there is a human being capable of deep love, fear, and anguish. The world saw her humanity, and it resonated on a level few royal appearances ever could. In the studio, the anchor tried to continue with the broadcast, but words faltered as Kate struggled to speak. Her hands shook visibly, a subtle tremor betraying the emotional storm within. Camera operators captured every nuance, the quick intake of breath, the momentary glare into the lens as if drawing strength from the viewers themselves. And then, as she collapsed into the nearest chair, the studio went silent. Not a sound was heard beyond the soft shuffle of staff rushing to her aid. Millions watching were glued to the screens, unable to look away. How often do we see someone of such stature, of such composure, completely overwhelmed by fear for someone they love? It was unprecedented. Meanwhile, back at Buckingham Palace, the aftermath of the protest was chaotic yet contained. Security teams reviewed footage, assessed injuries, and worked frantically to restore calm. Insiders later described the scene as organized chaos, a moment where protocol met unpredictability head-on. But what captured the world's imagination wasn't the technical response. It was the human response. William's bravery, Charles's trust in his son, Kate's reaction on live TV. They were moments of raw emotion, unscripted and profoundly moving. But the story doesn't end there. Even in the immediate aftermath, rumors began to swirl. Speculation about the severity of William's injuries, questions about the effectiveness of palace security, and debates over whether royal life had become too exposed, all fueled a media firestorm. Every angle, every photo, every comment was dissected. And yet, behind the flashing cameras and trending hashtags, a deeper narrative was unfolding. One that would reveal cracks, tensions, and hidden truths about what it means to live a life in the public eye, with danger and duty intertwined. Here's a fact that might shock you. Palace security is among the most rigorous in the world, yet nothing can fully predict human behavior. A single moment, a split-second decision, and history can shift. William's instinctive leap to protect his father was precisely that. A decision made in a heartbeat, grounded in love, duty, and courage. And Kate's reaction, televised and raw, reminded us all that bravery often comes with a price, and that the impact of such moments is felt far beyond the palace gates. As the story continues, you will hear insider accounts of every harrowing moment, minute-by-minute breakdowns of what occurred outside Buckingham Palace, and the emotional toll on the family. You'll hear from eyewitnesses, from experts on royal protocol, and from commentators who were among the first to react. Each piece will reveal not just the chaos of the event, but the depth of human emotion involved. You will see the dichotomy of public image versus private reality, the courage and fear, the tension and release. And through it all, one question lingers. How do you protect a legacy, a family, and a life in the midst of unanticipated danger? What would you do if you were standing just yards away from history in the making, yet completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit? That morning outside Buckingham Palace began like any other, calm and routine. Tourists strolled along the gates, snapping photos and marveling at the grandeur. Guards stood at attention, their faces stoic, as the soft morning sun bathed the iconic facade in golden light. There was an illusion of serenity, but beneath it, something was brewing. The streets around the palace had been unusually busy for a weekday. Pedestrians, drivers, and small groups of protesters mingled without incident, or so it seemed. In the royal apartments, Prince William and Kate Middleton had started their day as any royal couple would, a mixture of official duties and private moments. Kate had been preparing for her live TV appearance, rehearsing scripts and checking notes, while William moved through a series of briefings with palace staff. There was laughter, there was light conversation, the sense that life within these walls continued as it always had. And yet, the faint murmur of unrest outside was like a distant storm cloud, barely noticeable, but ominously present. At precisely 10:13 a.m., the first signs of unusual activity began to filter through. Palace security had noticed an organized group of protesters gathering at the main gates, signs raised, voices projecting grievances about recent royal decisions and political controversies. The protesters seemed peaceful at first, chanting and waving banners, drawing attention from onlookers and the media. Cameras were already rolling, capturing images of a public moment, the kind of footage that would normally fill social media feeds with lighthearted commentary. But then came the first subtle shift. The group was larger than anticipated. Their chants grew louder, more insistent. There was a tension in the air, a palpable sense of impatience that hinted the protest could escalate at any moment. Security personnel were quick to move in, creating barriers and directing the crowd, but every attempt at crowd control only seemed to intensify the determination of those assembled. The air was thick with anticipation, like the pause before a theatrical curtain rises. But in this case, the stage was set for real-life danger. Inside the palace, William was unaware of the specific details. He received briefings from his security team, but the reports seemed routine. A demonstration? No violence expected. Yet, his instincts told him something was off. Any royal who has spent time observing public behavior knows that protests can turn violent in the blink of an eye. And William, acutely aware of his father's vulnerability as king, began preparing himself mentally for what might come. He moved to a vantage point near the outer gates, calm and composed, a silent observer ready to act if necessary. Meanwhile, Kate finished final touches for her broadcast. Her hair perfectly arranged, her notes neatly stacked. She adjusted the microphone and practiced a few lines for the camera. She felt prepared, professional, ready to deliver a flawless segment. But even in those moments of composure, there was an unspoken anxiety. Royals are trained to read the room, to sense energy, to feel when something is amiss. Perhaps that morning, Kate felt it. The subtle shift in tension that most people would overlook, the first sign of impending chaos. By 10:45 a.m., the crowd outside had swelled dramatically. Word had spread quickly through social media and local networks, drawing protesters from surrounding neighborhoods. What started as a small, organized group had transformed into a larger, more unpredictable mob. Police and palace security positioned themselves at strategic points, but their presence only seemed to embolden the crowd. The atmosphere crackled with electricity, each chant louder than the last, each footstep heavier on the cobblestones. Onlookers held their breath, not knowing what might happen next. Then came the first act of aggression. A protester threw a small object, not large, not lethal at first glance, but the trajectory was unpredictable, and the tension it created rippled through the palace perimeter. Security teams reacted instantly, shielding others, guiding bystanders to safety. But one figure, Prince William, did something no one could have anticipated. Without hesitation, he moved into the path of potential harm, positioning himself to protect his father. It was instinctual, heroic, and frightening. Could you imagine the presence of mind, the courage it takes to put yourself directly in harm's way for someone else, knowing the risk is real and imminent? Eyewitnesses later described the moment as surreal. One security officer recounted, "It happened so fast. 1 second he was standing there observing, and the next he was in front of the king. There was no hesitation, just action." The crowd, initially unaware of his presence, now had a living symbol of courage at their center. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Cameras clicked, phones recorded, and the chaos had yet to fully unfold. But the first threads of danger were now in motion. Back in the studio, Kate received the call. It was brief, urgent, and incomprehensible at first. Security was on the line. William had been in the thick of the protest. He had moved to shield the king. There had been an object thrown. Injuries? Possibly. The words tumbled out too quickly, too jumbled to make complete sense. Kate's mind raced. The training, the composure, the countless rehearsals for public appearances. All of it evaporated in an instant. What do you do when someone you love is risking life and limb, and you are helpless to intervene? Across the city, media outlets caught wind of the incident almost immediately. Cameras that had been focused on the palace gates now turned to capturing live reactions, crowds, and chaos. Headlines formed in real time, a mixture of factual reporting and speculation. Social media exploded. Prince William caught in protest. Kate Middleton breaks down live on air. Buckingham Palace under siege. Within minutes, millions were watching, some with horror, some with fascination, all captivated by the drama unfolding. Inside the palace, the tension escalated. Security teams, already stretched thin, coordinated with local law enforcement to contain the situation. Barriers were reinforced, routes were cleared, and officers moved swiftly to prevent further escalation. William remained at the forefront, steady, vigilant, aware that a single misstep could have catastrophic consequences. The courage he displayed was not just physical. It was psychological, a disciplined calm in the eye of a storm. How often do we see such clarity in the face of unpredictable danger? And yet, despite his poise, the situation was dangerous. Another object, larger this time, flew from the crowd, narrowly missing the king but striking William instead. The injury was immediate, painful, and visible to those nearby. His expression remained controlled, but a grimace betrayed the impact. He had acted decisively, but the cost was clear. Could anyone have predicted the personal toll this moment would take? Not just on him, but on Kate, on the family, and on the perception of the monarchy worldwide. As the crowd slowly began to disperse under the coordinated efforts of security and police, the full picture of the day's events began to emerge. The protest was over, but the consequences were only just beginning. William had taken the brunt of the danger, shielding his father in a moment of instinctive heroism. Kate had experienced the rawest form of fear and love, her live TV breakdown a testament to the human side of royalty. And the world watched, riveted, as these events unfolded, realizing that even the most protected lives are not immune to chaos. Have you ever wondered what it truly takes to face danger without hesitation, to put someone else's life above your own, and to stand firm when chaos is swirling all around? That's exactly what Prince William did on that fateful morning, and the moment would define the day in ways no one could have predicted. The seconds leading up to the incident were deceptively calm. William, fully aware of the crowd swelling outside the gates, positioned himself strategically near the outermost barrier, observing, calculating, ready. Security briefings had warned him of potential unrest, but nothing could replicate the sensory overload of being on the front line. Chants echoing, signs flapping violently, shouts ricocheting against the palace walls. Each movement from the crowd was unpredictable, each gesture potentially dangerous. And yet, he remained composed. He had faced public scrutiny and pressure before, but never anything like this. Then it happened. The first object was thrown, not with malicious intent, perhaps, but with reckless abandon. It sailed through the air, heading straight toward King Charles. Instinct took over. William moved faster than thought, positioning himself to absorb the impact. Time seemed to slow for those watching. To the world, it might have looked like a calculated maneuver. In reality, it was instinctive courage. He had a choice. Step aside, ensure his own safety, and allow the king to face danger, or intervene and take the risk himself. William chose the latter. Security officers described the moment as almost cinematic. One remarked later, he was like a shield. It was the purest form of bravery. You could see the thought, the calculation, the fear, but also the determination. He just moved. He protected the king. In the chaos, William was not thinking about headlines or public image. He was thinking only of his father, the man he loved and respected, the figure who symbolized the monarchy, and the person he would protect at any cost. What makes this stand even more extraordinary is the split-second timing. The second object, larger and faster, followed almost immediately. Many around the gates were scrambling to react, shielding themselves, stepping back, shouting warnings. But William remained at the center. He didn't flinch, didn't falter. The impact hit him directly, leaving bruises, cuts, and a sting of pain that would be felt later, once adrenaline subsided. But for that moment, he was unwavering, a literal barrier between danger and the man he had sworn to protect. Can you imagine that level of focus? That mental clarity under physical stress? Most people freeze, panic, or flee. Not William. He displayed a combination of bravery, discipline, and presence of mind that left even experienced security personnel stunned. A veteran palace guard later revealed, "I've trained for decades, but seeing him act like that, It was beyond training. That was pure instinct and courage combined. Meanwhile, the crowd was still moving, unpredictable, surging with energy. Some protesters didn't even realize who was in front of them at first. Others recognized him and froze, caught between anger and awe. Cameras captured the entire moment. William shielding the king, absorbing the impact, keeping his balance, and maintaining composure as chaos raged around him. Those images would later dominate social media feeds worldwide, going viral within minutes, leaving millions in shock and admiration. But courage often comes with a cost. Though the objects thrown did not inflict life-threatening injuries, William felt the immediate impact. His shoulder bore the force of one object, his side another. Small cuts and bruises formed, but more importantly, the psychological toll began to build. Being in the direct path of danger, fully aware of the consequences, requires not just physical strength but emotional resilience. He had no time to consider the pain. His focus remained on protecting his father. In the control room of Buckingham Palace, security teams were frantically coordinating responses. Officers radioed updates, assessed crowd behavior, and attempted to maintain a protective barrier around the king. But the unpredictability of human behavior meant that no plan could fully account for William's spontaneous heroism. One insider admitted later, "He made the right choice in the moment, but it threw off all of our calculations. He became the central figure, the one everyone was focused on, and we had to adapt in real time." Let's pause here and consider something remarkable. How often do we see a figure of royalty act in such a human, selfless way? The public sees ceremonial appearances, speeches, and media events, but rarely do they witness the raw courage required to step into the path of harm without hesitation. In those moments, William was not just a prince. He was a son, a protector, and a man facing unpredictable danger head-on. What makes the story even more gripping is that William's actions were not rehearsed. There were no drills, no simulations that could perfectly mirror this event. He acted with instinct, intuition, and an unwavering sense of duty. Could you imagine making that decision in the blink of an eye, knowing that your choice could change the course of the day, or even end in serious injury? That is the reality he faced. As the objects continued to fly, security personnel worked to clear a path, guiding the king safely to cover while simultaneously shielding William. Some protesters began to back away, realizing the intensity of the moment, while others continued pushing forward, oblivious to the hero standing in their path. The tension was palpable. The palace gates, once a symbol of order and tradition, had become a stage for bravery, fear, and chaos all at once. And then, just as quickly as it began, the crowd began to thin. Security managed to regain control, escorting key figures to safe zones within the palace grounds. William, though injured, remained composed. The adrenaline that had carried him through the moments of danger now began to fade, leaving him aware of the aches, cuts, and bruises he had sustained. But there was no time to linger, no moment to dwell. The crisis had passed physically, but the emotional and psychological aftermath had only just begun. Across London, and indeed across the world, the footage of William's stand spread like wildfire. News outlets scrambled to provide context, analysis, and commentary. Social media exploded with hashtags praising his bravery. Hashtag Prince William Hero, hashtag Royal Courage, hashtag Protecting the King. Public sentiment was overwhelmingly supportive, but mixed with curiosity and shock. People wanted to know the details. How badly was he hurt? What drove him to act so decisively? And most importantly, how was Kate coping with the news? Because at the same time, in the studio, Kate Middleton was receiving the updates in real time. Her heart was racing, her hands trembling, and her composure was fraying. She had just witnessed her husband step into danger, protect his father, and sustain injuries, and there was nothing she could do to help. The magnitude of the event, combined with the intensity of live broadcasting, created a perfect storm of emotion that would soon overwhelm her completely. William's heroic actions, though praised publicly, also ignited debates behind the scenes. Security analysts questioned whether the royal family had underestimated the risk of public protests. Palace aides speculated about whether William's presence at the gates was prudent or reckless. And insiders whispered about how this incident might affect future protocols, appearances, and even the balance of responsibility between the king and his heir. Could a single act of bravery redefine the expectations of a royal heir? The implications were enormous. Yet, for all the analysis, commentary, and speculation, the core of the story remained deeply human. William had acted out of love, loyalty, and a sense of duty. He had faced fear directly and made a choice that could have ended very differently. And in doing so, he had left the world with a vivid image of courage and selflessness, reminding everyone that even those who seem untouchable are human, vulnerable, and capable of extraordinary heroism. But what Kate would do in response, what the world would witness from her next, would leave viewers stunned. Moments after hearing of William's bravery, she would face the cameras, her composure shattered, her humanity exposed to millions. And what she revealed in that moment would send shockwaves far beyond the palace walls. Have you ever felt your world shift in an instant? A single phone call or message changing everything you thought was safe? That is exactly what happened to Kate Middleton the moment she learned what had just unfolded outside Buckingham Palace. The calm she had maintained through her morning routine evaporated in an instant. Her carefully rehearsed lines, the poised demeanor she relied on for live television, and the shield of composure she always wore were gone. In their place, raw, unfiltered fear and worry. The call came through during the final minutes before her segment was scheduled to air. Palace security, speaking quickly and urgently, relayed what had happened. William had been at the front of the protest. He had intervened to protect King Charles. He had been struck by a thrown object. His injuries, while not fatal, were serious enough to require immediate attention. Kate's mind went blank. For a moment, she could barely process the words. How could this be happening? How could something so routine spiral into such peril within mere seconds? In that instant, a flood of images and memories overwhelmed her. The early days of her relationship with William came rushing back. Quiet walks, shared confidences, private moments of laughter and trust. All of that contrasted sharply with the tangible danger. The gilded halls and ornate rooms were filled with human urgency, fear, and improvisation. A stark reminder that behind the pomp and ceremony, the royal family is vulnerable, just like anyone else. Amid the chaos, rumors began to circulate, some accurate, some speculative. Staff whispered about the severity of William's injuries, debated the response of the security teams, and speculated on what the public might think if the full story emerged. Each rumor added to the tension inside the palace, creating an almost surreal atmosphere where fear, anticipation, and protocol intersected. How do you maintain calm when the information you're relying on is fragmented and inconsistent? How do you reassure loved ones while the world is watching? These were questions the palace staff and the royal family had to navigate in real time. Despite the disorder, moments of heroism and quick thinking emerged. Security officers coordinated to ensure the king and William were safe. Medical personnel assessed injuries swiftly, prioritizing care while remaining alert to ongoing threats. Aides facilitated communication, both within the palace and with external agencies, ensuring that every piece of information was transmitted accurately. These moments demonstrated the resilience and professionalism of the staff, but also highlighted the fragility of even the most meticulously planned systems in the face of unexpected danger. Even as the immediate threat subsided, the psychological aftermath was just beginning. William had acted with bravery, but the exposure to danger, coupled with the injuries sustained, meant that recovery, both physical and emotional, would be necessary. Kate's emotional response, broadcast live, had drawn global attention, underscoring the profound human dimension of the incident. The palace itself faced scrutiny, with questions about security protocols, preparedness, and decision-making. And for the royal family, the incident became a defining moment, one that would shape both public perception and internal dynamics for months to come. What no one could predict, however, was that within the palace, deeper tensions and surprising revelations were starting to surface. Conflicting reports about the protest, the coordination of security, and even the actions of certain staff members hinted at layers of complexity that had yet to be fully understood. The chaos outside was only the visible part of the story. The invisible web of decisions, emotions, and reactions inside the palace promised twists that would leave the public stunned. And as the dust began to settle, one fact became undeniably clear. The calm that had existed before the protest was gone forever. The palace, the royal family, and even the public would never look at Buckingham Palace or its inhabitants the same way again. Have you ever paused to consider what it truly means to live under constant public scrutiny? To be watched, photographed, judged, and admired all at once, while simultaneously facing dangers that most people could never imagine. That is the reality for members of the royal family, and on that fateful day outside Buckingham Palace, it was made brutally clear. The protest that erupted was not just a moment of chaos. It was a vivid reminder that public life comes with hidden, often underestimated, risks. For Prince William, the dangers of public life had never been abstract. From childhood, he understood the weight of visibility, the need for constant vigilance, and the ever-present possibility of threats. Security teams had trained extensively for potential attacks, protests, and emergencies. Protocols were in place, contingencies planned, and every detail carefully considered. And yet, nothing could truly replicate the adrenaline, the unpredictability, and the immediate stakes of a crowd that turns from peaceful to volatile in seconds. The protest itself had been organized for weeks, under the guise of a political demonstration. Signs and slogans reflected grievances that ranged from dissatisfaction with recent royal initiatives to broader political frustrations. The crowd was initially orderly, with chants echoing politely across the streets and cameras capturing what seemed like a normal civic demonstration. But within minutes, the dynamic changed. Emotions ran high, the crowd surged unpredictably, and objects, thrown in anger or carelessness, turned a simple protest into a dangerous scenario. What makes this even more astonishing is that William had no choice but to act. The king, despite his presence and stature, is vulnerable in such situations. Security could only do so much, and William, driven by instinct, courage, and a deep sense of duty, positioned himself to shield his father. It was a decision that required split-second judgment and an unwavering commitment to protect, despite the inherent risk. Could you imagine standing in his place, knowing that one wrong step could result in serious injury or worse? The courage required is almost unimaginable. Kate's experience, meanwhile, highlighted another layer of public life's hidden dangers: emotional exposure. While William was physically at risk, Kate faced a different kind of vulnerability. Live on television, she learned that her husband had been injured while protecting the king. Millions of viewers witnessed her immediate emotional reaction: tears, trembling hands, a voice breaking under the weight of fear. Royals are often expected to mask emotion, to maintain composure at all costs. Yet Kate's breakdown reminded the world that even those trained to be symbols of stoicism are human. The psychological toll of public life is as real as any physical danger. Consider the contradictions inherent in royal existence. Public adoration comes with the expectation of perfection, yet the very act of being visible exposes royals to risk. Security measures, while extensive, cannot eliminate the threat of unpredictable human behavior. Even routine appearances, walks through a crowd, ceremonies, public engagements, carry inherent dangers that the public rarely sees. The very nature of being a symbol of the monarchy makes you a target, both physically and socially. The dangers extend beyond protests. Everyday public appearances carry risks that are often invisible to the casual observer. Crowds, while seemingly benign, can surge unpredictably. Media presence amplifies minor incidents into global stories. Social media scrutiny ensures that even the smallest misstep is magnified, dissected, and judged. And the emotional cost is constant: stress, anxiety, and the perpetual awareness that one's actions are never private. For William and Kate, these pressures are amplified exponentially by their roles as heirs and representatives of the monarchy. On that day, the protest was a microcosm of these hidden dangers. The crowd was unpredictable, the physical threat immediate, and the emotional consequences profound. William's actions were heroic, yet they carried inherent risk. Kate's live TV breakdown revealed the human cost of vigilance, love, and duty. And the palace, a symbol of centuries of stability, had been forced into improvisation, navigating chaos in real time. It was a stark reminder that behind the pomp, the crowns, and the ceremonial regalia lies a life that is fragile, exposed, and deeply human. Insider accounts later revealed just how close the incident came to turning catastrophic. A single misjudged step, a slightly heavier thrown object, or a momentary lapse in focus could have led to severe injury or worse. Security officers noted that William's positioning had absorbed impact that might otherwise have struck the king directly. The level of risk was extraordinary, yet he had acted instinctively without hesitation. It was a vivid demonstration of how the responsibilities of public life, especially within the royal family, are inseparable from the dangers inherent in exposure. And yet, despite the risk, the royal family continues to embrace public life. Their presence at events, engagements, and appearances is essential to their role, both symbolically and practically. But the incident outside Buckingham Palace serves as a reminder that such visibility is not without peril. Every engagement carries potential consequences, every public interaction a risk of physical harm or public scrutiny. The glamorous facade that captivates the world is inseparable from the hidden vulnerabilities that come with living in constant view. What Kate experienced in those moments underscores the duality of public life. Her breakdown was not merely personal. It was emblematic of the unseen emotional toll endured by those in the public eye. Fear for loved ones, anxiety over potential consequences, and the pressure of maintaining composure for millions of viewers intersected in a way that left her visibly shaken. It was a rare glimpse into the private human experience behind the public image of royalty. The psychological ramifications of such exposure are profound. Being constantly observed, judged, and scrutinized creates a pressure cooker environment where even ordinary challenges become amplified. Emotional responses, once private and manageable, are now public events, dissected and commented upon in real time. The palace staff, too, experienced these pressures, balancing operational duties with the emotional well-being of the family. Every decision carries weight, every misstep is magnified, and every crisis becomes a public spectacle. And then, as if the physical and emotional strain were not enough, another layer of complexity emerged. The protest had left behind questions, conflicting reports, and rumors that threatened to complicate the narrative further. How did the objects reach the gates despite tight security? Were there lapses in protocol? And most importantly, how would the public respond to the images of William's bravery and Kate's vulnerability? These questions loomed large, casting shadows over the day and foreshadowing further revelations that had yet to come to light. For William, the hidden dangers of public life became painfully tangible. He had acted with courage, but the incident highlighted the constant balancing act between duty, personal safety, and public expectation. For Kate, the dangers were emotional and psychological, a reminder that even in roles of influence and stature, love and fear remain constants. And for the palace, the event underscored the limitations of even the most elaborate security measures when faced with human unpredictability. What made this moment even more extraordinary was that it was a lesson for the world as much as it was a personal experience for the royal family. The public saw heroism, vulnerability, and the high stakes of royal life all at once. They witnessed bravery juxtaposed with fear, composure colliding with emotion, and tradition meeting the unpredictable realities of modern society. It was a revelation that the life of a royal is both glamorous and dangerous, and that no amount of protocol or preparation can fully mitigate the risks inherent in public visibility. But even as William recovered and Kate began to regain composure, new information began to emerge from inside the palace. Details about the protest, the crowd's actions, and the palace response that would shock insiders and the public alike. Secrets, contradictions, and unexpected twists were starting to surface, hinting that the dangers of public life extended far beyond what anyone had imagined. Have you ever wondered what really happens behind the palace walls when the public only sees carefully staged events and ceremonial appearances? The truth is far more complex, far more revealing, and far more human than most could imagine. On the day of the protest outside Buckingham Palace, while the cameras captured William's bravery and Kate's emotional breakdown, another story was unfolding behind the scenes, one that only insiders would ever fully understand. Palace insiders, speaking on condition of anonymity, began revealing details in the hours following the incident. Their accounts painted a picture of controlled chaos, rapid decision-making, and a level of stress that few outside the palace could comprehend. According to one longtime aide, it was like watching the gears of a clock suddenly jam. Everyone knew their role, but the unpredictability of the crowd changed everything. We were reacting as much as we were planning. These insiders described William's actions in vivid terms, emphasizing both his courage and his instinctive awareness of danger. One security officer recounted, "I've trained for threats, drills, simulations, and worst-case scenarios, but nothing prepares you for a royal acting out of instinct like William did. He moved faster than anyone could have anticipated, placing himself directly in harm's way without hesitation." The officer paused, reflecting on the rarity of such a response, adding, "It wasn't just bravery, it was a deep understanding of responsibility, combined with a human instinct to protect." But it wasn't just William whose actions captured attention. Kate's response, insiders revealed, had sent shockwaves throughout the palace staff. Seeing her on live TV, breaking down like that, it was like a punch in the stomach for everyone inside. "We knew she was worried, but the intensity of her reaction took even us by surprise," one aide admitted. Her composure, normally impeccable, had shattered in an instant, revealing the raw human fear that accompanies life under constant scrutiny. Other insiders spoke of the immediate logistical challenges that arose as the incident unfolded. Communication channels became overloaded, and information had to be relayed quickly, often with incomplete details. "We were juggling multiple crises at once," one staff member explained. Medical teams needed updates, security had to adjust positions, and the royal family had to be moved safely. And all the while, the world was watching through cameras and social media. The pressure was enormous, and the margin for error was razor-thin. Interestingly, insiders also highlighted a level of improvisation that is rarely acknowledged publicly. While the palace operates under strict protocols, these plans assume predictable behavior from crowds. "You can drill and rehearse all you want," one officer said, "but when a crowd moves unpredictably and objects start flying, you have to think on your feet." William's presence added another variable. We had to adjust everything instantly. This revelation underscored the reality that even the most meticulously designed security measures have limits when human behavior defies expectations. Perhaps most strikingly, insiders revealed the emotional toll the event took on staff themselves. Many were tasked with protecting the royal family, ensuring the safety of William and the king, and simultaneously supporting Kate in the studio. "There's an emotional burden that doesn't go away," one aide confessed. "You feel the fear, the adrenaline, the responsibility. It stays with you long after the crowd has dispersed." Their testimonies reminded the world that behind every royal appearance, there is a network of people carrying immense stress and responsibility. The insiders also provided insight into how information was managed within the palace. Early reports about William's injuries were fragmented, leading to speculation and concern. "We had to decide what to relay when and to whom," one senior official explained. There was no room for mistakes, because the wrong information could escalate fear or trigger rumors. Every word mattered. This highlights a hidden reality of royal life. Even when a crisis is contained physically, the management of perception is an equally critical challenge. Beyond logistics and fear, insiders shed light on the interpersonal dynamics at play. William's courage and Kate's visible vulnerability had ripple effects across the palace hierarchy. Staff members described a renewed sense of admiration for William's bravery, tempered by anxiety over the risks he had taken. Meanwhile, Kate's emotional response reinforced the human side of the monarchy, emphasizing that even the most poised individuals are deeply affected by danger to loved ones. It was a reminder, one insider noted, that we're not just managing events or security, we're supporting human beings, with all their vulnerabilities and emotions. Some insiders went further, revealing tensions that emerged in the aftermath. Differences in opinion about protocol, how the incident was handled, and the communication strategy surfaced almost immediately. There were debates about whether William should have been at the gates, about how quickly the king was moved, and about what information to release to the public, a palace staffer disclosed. These conflicts highlighted the delicate balance between tradition, duty, and the unpredictable reality of modern life for the royal family. Even more revealing were the whispers about public perception. Insiders noted that the palace was acutely aware of how Kate's breakdown and William's bravery would be interpreted globally. "We knew the public would react emotionally," one aide said, "but we weren't prepared for the level of engagement and discussion it would provoke online." Indeed, social media erupted, with millions weighing in on the event, dissecting images, and analyzing reactions in real time. What insiders understood, however, was that public interpretation is only part of the story. The private, behind-the-scenes reality is far more complex. The insiders also addressed one of the most surprising elements of the day, the unpredictability of the protest itself. While intelligence reports had anticipated some unrest, the level of aggression and the specific targeting of the royal family was unexpected. "We expected a demonstration, maybe some shouting," one security officer explained. "We did not expect objects to be thrown toward the king, or William to be forced into the position he took. It was a situation none of us had trained for exactly like that." This admission underscores the vulnerability inherent in public life, even for individuals who are among the most protected in the world. Beyond the immediate physical threat, insiders highlighted the psychological complexity of the incident. The emotional impact of witnessing danger, managing fear, and maintaining composure is often underestimated. Even for someone as disciplined as William, the adrenaline, shock, and responsibility create a lasting effect, one palace official noted. Kate's breakdown was a human response we all understood, but seeing it publicly amplified its significance. These reflections provide a rare glimpse into the mental and emotional demands placed on royals and their teams. Some insiders hinted at further revelations, details that had yet to be made public. There were conflicting accounts of how quickly security responded, debates over whether certain protocols were bypassed, and questions about how the crowd was able to breach outer barriers at all. "There are layers to what happened that the public hasn't seen," one staff member explained. "The chaos outside is only one piece. The decisions inside, the coordination, the split-second choices, all of that matters too." It was a subtle warning that the story was far from over, that what had been revealed so far was only the surface of a far deeper, more intricate narrative. The most compelling insight from insiders was the reminder of humanity in the midst of protocol. Security officers, aides, and palace staff were not just executing orders. They were making decisions influenced by fear, intuition, and loyalty. "You have to make judgment calls in seconds," one officer said. "Every choice has consequences, and those consequences affect real people you care about. That's the hidden reality of public life." And as these accounts continued to emerge, the world began to grasp the complexity of the royal experience. William's heroism, Kate's emotional vulnerability, the palace's rapid response, and the unpredictability of the protest all converged to create a moment that would be studied, analyzed, and remembered for years to come. The contrast between the public spectacle and the private reality was stark, highlighting how peril and humanity coexist behind the scenes of ceremonial life. Have you ever witnessed a moment so intense it feels like the world stops, even for a second? That moment arrived for millions when news spread that Prince William, the heir to the throne, had been injured while protecting his father during a violent protest outside Buckingham Palace. What initially seemed like a minor incident had escalated into a dramatic, nation-shaking event that would dominate headlines, social media, and conversations across the globe. The object that struck William, though small in size, had significant impact due to the force and angle at which it hit. One insider later described the scene. It wasn't just a graze or a bump. It hit him with enough force to knock him slightly off balance. Anyone else could have been seriously hurt. Reports indicated bruising on his shoulder, minor cuts along his arm, and a jolt that left him momentarily stunned. But perhaps the most critical aspect of the injury was not the physical pain. It was the risk it posed to him and to King Charles. Had William not acted decisively, the consequences could have been far worse. The palace medical team acted immediately. Emergency responders assessed the injury, providing first aid and stabilizing him while ensuring that no further threats were present. The procedure was swift but meticulous. Staff who witnessed it described William as calm, almost stoic, despite the obvious pain and shock. But while the world would later see this as heroism, insiders noted that the experience was deeply jarring for him and everyone involved. He didn't flinch outwardly, one medical officer said, but internally, the adrenaline, the awareness of what could have happened. It's something that lingers. That kind of stress doesn't just disappear. For the public, the moment became symbolic. Headlines splashed across newspapers and digital platforms. Prince William hurt protecting the king, royal family under threat. Kate Middleton breaks down live on TV. Social media amplified the story exponentially. Every news clip, every photo of William being escorted to safety, every report about the protest sparked millions of reactions. Commentators debated the level of danger, the effectiveness of palace security, and the courage displayed by the prince. Yet behind the dramatic headlines, the personal impact on William and the family was profound, far beyond the simple narrative of heroism. Kate's emotional response on live television underscored the human cost of the injury. As viewers watched, they saw her struggle to maintain composure, her hands trembling, voice cracking, eyes brimming with tears. For a global audience, it was a moment of unprecedented vulnerability from a member of the royal family, a public display of private fear, love, and concern. Insiders later revealed that Kate's reaction was genuine, not performance. She was terrified, one aide said, and the fact that she had to manage that while being live on air made it exponentially harder. But the story of the injury was more than physical or emotional. It highlighted the unpredictable risks of public life. William had intervened instinctively, aware of the threat to his father, yet there had been no time to calculate potential outcomes or weigh consequences. He acted on instinct, loyalty, and courage. The protest, while small in terms of overall numbers, had escalated unpredictably. Objects thrown, shoving from the crowd, and sudden movements created a chaotic environment where danger could arise from any direction. And William, by placing himself in that line of fire, became both protector and target. Eyewitness accounts painted a vivid picture of the moment. One security officer described it as if in slow motion. William reacting instantly to shield the king, moving with precision, absorbing the impact, then guiding the king to safety while still aware of the threats around him. It was like watching a trained professional in a simulation, the officer said. But this wasn't a drill. It was real, and the stakes were life and death. The psychological implications were equally significant. Experiencing an injury in such circumstances is traumatic, compounded by the awareness of public scrutiny. William's ability to remain composed while injured demonstrated remarkable discipline, but insiders noted that such experiences leave lingering emotional effects. Even for someone like William, this is not something you just shake off, one palace aide explained. The adrenaline, the stress, the knowledge of what could have happened, it affects you long after the event ends. For the royal family, the incident created a cascade of tension. King Charles was both grateful and concerned, aware of the physical risk William had taken on his behalf. Kate's visible distress heightened the emotional stakes, reminding everyone inside the palace of the human cost behind every public appearance. Staff had to balance providing care, maintaining security, and managing media narratives, all while witnessing the real-time emotional and physical toll on their employers. International reaction added another layer. Global media outlets covered the story extensively, dissecting every detail, from the severity of the injury to the bravery displayed. Public opinion was overwhelmingly supportive, praising William's courage and empathizing with Kate's heartbreak. Yet analysts also began to question the adequacy of security measures. Could the palace prevent such incidents in the future? How would this affect the monarchy's public image and operational procedures? The answers were unclear, and the debate would continue for weeks. One surprising revelation from insiders was that the injury, though not life-threatening, could have long-term implications. Even minor bruising or trauma can impact physical performance, especially in high-pressure scenarios requiring vigilance and rapid decision-making. Medical staff emphasized the importance of both physical and psychological recovery, highlighting that the visible bravery is only one component of resilience. The hidden effects, stress, anxiety, and physical strain, must also be managed carefully. William's injury also underscored the vulnerability inherent in public life. Unlike ordinary citizens, royals cannot retreat entirely from public exposure. Security is extensive but not infallible, and every appearance carries risk. From ceremonial events to seemingly benign public engagements, danger can arise suddenly, unpredictably, and in ways that demand immediate response. The incident at Buckingham Palace was a stark, unforgettable reminder of this reality. And yet, for all the danger, there was an undeniable sense of awe and admiration. William's courage, combined with Kate's raw emotional response, created a narrative of heroism, vulnerability, and human resilience. The public was captivated not just by the drama, but by the authenticity of the reactions, reminders that even the most protected, most visible individuals